Hello, welcome to the Inside Out Conversations for yet another episode. Today, we have a wonderful conversation that is ahead of us, and here's what we have in store for you. So, when we think of leaders who struggle, we often picture people who lack skill or capability. But in reality, some of the most brilliant and accomplished leaders, those with decades of experience, advanced degrees, and proven track records, are the very ones who hold themselves back. Not because they don't have enough or they don't know enough, but because there's something far subtler. That's what we call as confidence. And that's what's often called as the confidence gap. And it's indeed a paradox. The smarter that you are, the more likely you are to keep second guessing yourself. You analyze more, you anticipate more, and sometimes you even hesitate more. Instead of stepping into opportunities, you wait. Instead of speaking up, you defer. And the cost isn't just personal, it can affect teams, organizations, and the impact you could be making. In today's conversation, we are going to unpack why this happens, what it looks like in real life, and most importantly, how to move beyond it. Because confidence isn't about being loud or brash, it's about aligning what you already know you can do with how you show up in the world. And to explore this, I'm going to be joined by my wonderful co host and guest on today's conversation, mindset coach Manju, who has worked with amazing leaders who has faced this exact challenge. Together, we'll dive into the invisible walls that hold even the smartest leaders back and signals that show you might be stuck in the confidence gap and the practical steps you can take to shift from self doubt to self trust. If you ever felt like your abilities outpace the way you present yourself, or if you know you're capable of more, but something keeps you from stepping forward, this conversation is going to resonate deeply with you. Hello, Manju. Welcome today to this amazing conversation, and I'm really excited to dive into the minds of leaders that you have worked with. So, how are you doing today, Manju?
Hey, Jaran, thanks for having me. I'm doing really well, and I'm really excited for this conversation because this is going to be like the core of the work that we do together, right? So I'm really excited to share it with the audience.
Fantastic. So, I want to get started on a simple note. Okay,
Mhm.
do leaders have a gap in confidence? That's what I want to just open up on the conversation front to start with.
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely, yes.
Really?
Yes. See, but then yes, there is always a myth that they grow up the ladder. They're very confident, but people based on the growth, they still have variety of confidence issues, if I may say so.
Okay. That's actually a little bit of a surprise to me, and what's next is going to be an even more surprise to me. Okay. So when I wanted to ask this question, I sort of felt like it is really counterintuitive. Okay. Do you think highly intelligent leaders sometimes struggle with the most in the aspect of confidence?
No, you can't put all under one bracket. It's not the same. I'm not saying that everybody who is a senior leader has confidence issues. Neither am I taking the other route that everybody has confidence. No, every case is subjective. But just consider this scenario. There is a person who is been working for a few years, say like 10, 15 years plus experience. There's a lot of information, knowledge, and the technicalities that they have gathered throughout the experience, right? But as they move into a new role, what is the first thought is, I know enough for the role that I'm taking right now. Now, what is going to be new? What is going to be fresh? Because with every year, the responsibility adds up. Yeah, the problems that they solve adds up. So they also have built a reputation over the years that they are very good problem solvers. That's why they are growing in the career in the first place. So there is a lot of self doubt element also coming there, where they feel, okay, what if I don't deliver? And that itself starts creating a lot of thought process, and then the person might visibly, or say just within themselves, have a lot of issues.
Now that you said that putting themselves into new positions of responsibilities get them to bring an element of self doubt within themselves. Do you think there's an element of overthinking or over analyzing that could really result in this kind of a gap in confidence? Is that something a possibility?
Yes. I recently dealt with a client. He forgets a lot of things at home, but he never forgets anything in office. While it might play out very well in the professional front, but my question was, why is that happening? If you're capable of remembering, then in that case, you would remember everywhere. But then he came to me with this as a problem. Okay. Why am I not able to recall things personally? Because there probably the consequences are not there, right? They're easily forgiven, or they're like, okay, fine, it's all right, you forgot it, maybe next year you remember it. So they're more forgiving people around. But sometimes the work gets done much faster because of the fear element that people have, that if I forget, this is going to happen, right? So even that fear can also create the doubts, the overthinking, and the confidence issue which subsequently follows. See, confidence issue is, it's such a broad bracket, and there are so many triggers which can create confidence issues, and self-doubt, overthinking, and having a lot of things to deliver. The deadline is fast approaching, you have too many things on the plate, usually creates confidence issues.
See, you mentioned two aspects in the last 5 minutes or so. One aspect is regarding change in positions or change in designations that creates a little bit of a challenge in leaders. That's one aspect of it. And the second aspect, you mentioned that people are a little bit more sorted in their professional spaces, but more prone to having a lack of confidence in their personal spaces. Now, my question is, keeping aside the personal aspect of it and keeping aside the change of designation or the growth in their responsibility aspect of it, simply put, they are in a particular role and they are in their workplace environment. Given this combination, there's no change in their professional designation or role and responsibility, and this has got nothing to do with their personal lives. Do you see there's a aspect of over analyzing and overthinking in this sphere of their professional endeavors?
Absolutely. But before answering that, I wanted to add one thing. I'm not saying that in personal life the confidence issues is more. No. What I'm saying is, even if the confidence is not there, they are okay to make mistakes because they are actually confident that they can solve the problem at home, right? So that way, what happens is they're not overcautious, overprotective. They don't have a lot of walls around them. So if they forget, they forget. It's a little bit more easier. The person who came to me, he did not come to me wanting to solve the problem. He was very curious as to why is that there is a difference in personal professional. So that is what we work towards. And again, coming to this question, if you say the promotions are not happening, there's not much of a change, even in that case, is there confidence issues? Yes. Now, let me give you a scenario, the layoffs. Somebody speaks about layoffs, say one company starts laying off, you will see that there is a trend in everybody being so fearful. Oh my goodness, the layoffs have started. If X company has started, probably my company will also start. I'm already in the senior leadership. Laying me off is going to be a huge cost saving thing for the company. So maybe I'm in the pipeline. That creates a lot of fear. And again, this is one odd scenario, which is like a big thing. And considering an everyday thing, everything is normal. People are going, they are doing the same responsibilities that they're doing usually. Confidence still is an element which can have different avatars, or say different levels of confidence issues on an everyday basis. Say maybe one day they're like 10 on 10 on confidence, on one day probably they're 1 on 10 on confidence. There are various factors influencing each other, so we cannot really say this is how it's going to be if these metrics are there. No, we cannot really say that.
Okay, sounds reasonable. Now you mentioned about there are no walls around at the personal spaces. I want to talk about what could be what we can call as an invisible wall, okay, that exists in professional environment, that makes leaders in hesitating in making decisions in whatever the responsibility that they are accountable for.
See, usually we pick up our ways of how we are responding to rejections when we were children, right? How probably a family member or a friend or a neighbor or a relative, how they treated and how did we feel rejected that way? So then our mind starts creating a pattern on how can we safely react to that rejection, right? So that kind of carries into adulthood and it becomes a generic pattern. That's how we respond in general. So at a professional setup, when somebody rejects you, it's far more painful, so they try to always maneuver around it.
Okay,
So
okay,
that also might be one of the issues, because if they know that they're going to go in for a presentation and there is a possibility that their presentation is going to be criticized or rejected or questioned, or to made to not feel validated or accepted, probably the triggers of confidence issues might just shoot up.
okay. See, since we are getting into the conversation of the invisible walls, okay, from your perspective, okay, based on so many leaders that you've worked with as a mindset coach, okay, if you can list out some two, three invisible barriers that hold back leaders, even if they look very successful on a resume.
Mhm. The very first one is definitely the fear of acceptance. Like, will they accept me or not? Will they reject me? What are they going to think about me? That is one of the biggest one. The more they grow in their career, the first thought is, I have created this reputation. I want to guard that reputation. You know what? I don't want to tarnish it. I don't want people to start looking down on me. So they are extra cautious. Let's just be very practical. When you're extra cautious, say if you're into a sport, and you're being so cautious. Say, consider a cricket. The batsman has probably a reputation. Let's take the example of, say, Sachin Tendulkar before he retired. Usually a very well established cricketer, how does their career end most often is they have had a fantastic run, and then there comes a point where their performance probably dips. Sometimes they take a break, sometimes they come back and they renew, and then at a point they realize, hey, you know what, I think I have given the prime of my life. I don't have really the energy in me. The skill is there, the experience is there, but then the energy kind of dips. So maybe I'm not able to give my best. That's when they take retirement, because they love the sport anyways. They do not want to go. They want to play as long as they can, but then they realize the energy is not there. Correct. So similarly, when the moment the anxiety starts coming in, will I be hitting that century, will I be scoring some runs, or am I going to just get out on the first ball? When that thought process starts dominating the cricketer's mind, what happens is they start becoming very cautious. When they are very cautious, the game in itself is lost. You are a cricketer yourself, I know, so you would definitely agree. So if you're not really there being expressing yourself, you're being cautious, there are like multiple walls around you, then how do people even see who you are as a person?
Makes sense. So, lack of the fear of not being accepted, then the confidence level dipping in due to lack of energy and not living up to the prime. Anything else to add to this apart from this?
See, the very first thing that I said, the rejection. We have to understand that we are social beings. It doesn't really have to be, say, Charan's upbringing, how he related during childhood, Manju's upbringing. No, we are social beings. We like to be connected with people. So rejection per se for our species is very difficult to handle. So I think anything which comes out of this confidence issue, it comes from there. That's like the source of the problem.
Okay, so you mentioned about the fear of lack of acceptance, right? I want to put that in a different way. Okay,
Mhm.
so how much of this is rooted? So lack of acceptance is, in another way we can call it as fear of failure. Okay,
Yeah.
so I want to draw a parallel between how much of this hesitation or the walls that the leaders create for themselves, how much of this is rooted into this fear of failure versus a fear of judgment from your experience.
Mhm. Okay. Now, fear of failure is you personally failing that. When it comes to fear of judgment, fear of failure comes from within. Again, it stems from predominantly it stems from fear of judgment. What are they going to say? If you see a child who's newborn and who's maybe first year they're trying to walk, the child, no matter how many times they fail, and they know that the parents are actually laughing at them. Hey, it's so cute. So the comment is actually validation, right? So when that comes, the child is actually keeping on trying, keeping on trying, keeping on trying. But then slowly, say if the child is still falling down while say they are in the third, fourth year of their life, then the parents are actually criticizing. Why can't you just walk straight? Right? So then the tone in which the input comes slowly starts making them feel not validated or accepted, and then there is this element of hurt or pain. So then it goes to the other area where it's pain or pleasure. So human beings prefer pleasure, and most often we're not choosing pleasure. There is pain, we are going around the pain to not really feel it. So that way also they tend to be in an illusionary space of pleasure. Am I making sense?
No, makes sense. I'm just trying to consume this from a perspective of a senior professional, right? Because these are things for a junior, they could probably have a just a conversation around a smoke or just a conversation around a coffee break at the end of the day. But then, for as you grow up in your professional ladder,
Mhm.
there are a lot of conversations which you cannot have just like that, right?
Yes.
So there's also a lack of space and forum, and that also comes to start making forming
I'm
walls.
really glad you raised this because they do not have the space to talk as they grow up the ladder, because maybe the other team lead is judging you with the way you're leading the team, right? Because you do not have a place to say, and probably even at home when you say, maybe the other person cannot really understand. So what happens? There is a lot of thought process, and then there is no discussion happening. If there is a mentor, great. If there is no mentor for them to confide in and take opinions on, the thoughts keep ringing in their head. When it keeps ringing in their head, what happens? There's a lot of confusion, right?
Right.
Which is the right way to go about? So when they are consumed with so much of thought process and confusion, what happens?
Actually, I was very intrigued by your child walking analogy. So I'm just building on that to get to the next question that I have on this exact topic. Okay, so do you think there is a cultural conditioning or organizational dynamics, either or both of it, that contributes to a leader, a senior professional, in starting to build these walls for themselves, and they end up hesitating in doing a lot of things?
Both of it has a role to play. Now, let's consider an example. Say the child has had a very difficult childhood, and then they grow up into a professional. They go into a workplace which is very encouraging and empowering, where speaking about issues or problems, or problem solving happens very collaboratively. Everybody has a voice. When they start having a work environment like that, it becomes very easier for them to shed the walls around them. And conditioning creates a lot of walls around them, and then if they move into a very empowering and an uplifting environment, they feel safe to let go of that wall. The moment they are having those many walls is to guard themselves from not feeling rejected. So when they know that they're not going to be rejected, and the reassurance comes from the management, from their team leaders, from their peers, then they feel that environment is very safe. So that way the organization dynamics definitely has a role to play, a very crucial role to play.
So, in a lot of ways, if I could say, these walls are to be broken from outside, lot more than from to be broken from within.
That's an interesting question. It happens both ways. Sometimes the environment is very powerful. That is something which I'll have to say. Most often, when people are growing, we have a lot of knowledge. We live in the knowledge era, so people already have this thought process of reflection. Hey, you know what? The other person is growing faster. What do I lack that I can also match up to their speed or probably surpass them? So they do a lot of reflection, and then they approach professionals to help them. If say the work environment is not conducive, they do not have say the conditioning was also different, and they are into a repetitive pattern, then probably they reach out to a professional like a mentor or a coach or a teacher, whatever works for them. So it is, yeah, again, it is both ways.
Makes sense.
When both of it comes together, I would say the transformation is much faster. Say the environment is also supportive, and then you're also doing the inner work, understanding, creating the awareness, taking the right actions, and you're being accountable to quickly change. I think the magic happens when the work is inside out always.
Sounds like a task. Okay.
I
So
do.
I want to get into the next aspect of it. Okay. See, now that you mentioned that there are a lot of challenges, there are some challenges within, some challenges in the upbringing, some challenges from the environment, some challenges in the role change, some challenges related to the personal professional dynamics, so many things. Okay. Now I want to dive into the aspect of you being a mindset coach. Okay, what are the possibilities or what are the early signs that you will be able to make sense of or detect in a leader that they are actually caught in a confidence gap and they don't even realize it, they're not even telling it out loudly that they are in this space. So what is the way that you go about figuring that out in a far more faster manner?
Victimhood. In one simple word, how do we quickly spot victimhood? And what do I mean by victimhood? When they position themselves as people who have become prey to the environment. Hey, this is happening, that is happening, this has happened, this has gone wrong. So repetitive patterns of either complaining, blaming, or criticizing. No matter how much energy we put in complaining, blaming, criticizing, nothing is going to change, right? If something could have changed, it would have changed the first or second time that they raised. If they have raised it like 10 times and if things are not changing, it is not going to change. In that case, what has to change? It is themselves. So how can we push them towards taking responsibility and seeing, okay, these things are going to be existing. So now what are the options that you have? And how can you start leveraging based on the options that you have?
So you're saying a leader who is wanting to become a better person, when they show signs of portraying themselves as victims of the environment, then that's the simplest and the most easiest of signals. Is that what you're telling?
Yes.
Okay.
See, predominantly you go to any coach. I think the very first thing that they would identify is where are they making themselves a victim. Because the moment they are making themselves a victim, what does it show? See, as a third person, if I am victimizing myself on a certain situation, what am I telling my mind? That I'm not capable of dealing with it. And till the time I'm telling myself that I'm not capable of dealing with it, I will never find a ways to deal with it, right? So I'll have to go from say one destination to another destination. I'll have to move from the first destination to reach there, right? So when I'm conveniently telling, hey, this has happened to me, this has happened to me, I'm just sitting there, correct? So you're wishfully thinking that the situation will change. You'll go from here to here, but no, you'll have to make the move. So if you go to any coach, the very first session is, or say the continuous journey is going to say, how can you take absolute responsibility of whatever situation you are in?
The aspect related to confiding in the coach or making the coach aware of their uh, gap in confidence is one aspect of it. The other aspect is there is a large amount of time that they spend in workplace environments where the coach is not alongside with them, right? So how does this lack of confidence in themselves um, reflect in day-to-day situations, like in meetings, decision makings, and how do they handle opportunities, trust issues, or it could be a firefighting situation, whatever be the possible things that happens. What are the signs that these happens there?
Okay. See, basically, the coach and the coachee are trying to co create a change in the coaching, right? So, there is obviously a lot of conversation. The very first month of engagement, they're trying to understand the coachee and the way they're responding to situations. That's going to be the first level. Creating an awareness for the coach and the coachee themselves on how are they showing up and relating to the world and situations, right? And from then on, the work is not about winning the situations. No, we're not working around that. The job for the coach and the coach is to see how we can elevate the coaching so that they start relating to things in a very different way. So the work is more inwards. So that way, irrespective of what's happening, not happening in the workplace, the work is on them. So we are not trying to behave a certain way in certain situations. No, say a person is working around their communication skills. I'll just give you this example. It might make it more clearer. A person is trying to work on their communication skills and say creating a powerful presence wherever they are, which might lead them to getting a better job opportunity, or say they are getting promoted to a CXO level. Now, the idea is not just to work on communication and the powerful presence. That will be the direction in which we are working. But then the core of the work that we are going to do is to see how we can elevate them as people. So they become really worthy of getting that CXO's position. So it has different variables.
Makes sense. So as I understand, a lot of leaders, they have a lot of competence, okay, in terms of whatever this domain, whatever the space that they are in, okay. So when it comes to handling a situation of balancing between having humility versus having hesitancy in the way they run their personalities, how do you find a balance between being humble and trying to be very hesitant because of lack of confidence?
I have seen predominantly when people have lack of confidence, I have seen people put on the hat of being a people pleaser, right? And sometimes people pleasing and humility appears the same. When a person is growing up to be a leader for the first time, or probably for the 10th time, they have just grown so much in their career. Sternness, assertiveness with an element of empathy is what makes them a leader. And when they are speaking that way to people, they are relating to people and getting things done in that tone. They're respectful, they're empathetic, but then they're stern and assertive as well. They mean what they mean, they get things done, but then they do it with a lot of respect and empathy. When they have that skill going on always, I think they're very confident. And if any of this is missing, then probably there is a bit of a confusion. Hey, how can I deal with this? Okay, if I deal with this way, what is the other person going to think? Is it going to have repercussions? See, sometimes it is not even just the other person's opinion, it's also what repercussions it might lead into. So when, if they know what they stand for and if they know what they're doing is right, whatever repercussion comes, we can always deal with that.
Okay, so let's say we are in a situation of being able to figure out there are certain challenges that we have. Okay, so now they have not yet reached out to anybody. So, as a person who has realized that they have a self doubt, okay,
Mhm.
uh, from your perspective or from your experience, what are all a few practical actions that they can take on their own to help build their confidence on a very small and consistent manner?
Mhm. For confidence, if you ask me, any activity, nothing works like magic, like a mirror exercise. All that you'll have to do is, it is very weird in the beginning, but then as you do it with time, you'll just see how much you're having difficulty in expressing things with yourself. And that will actually fascinate you. So I just give the senior leaders this very basic activity. Just take 3 to 4 minutes maximum, a day, probably in the morning or in the evening. Evening works best because the way you're thinking, and you're going to bed, your mind keeps marinating that idea. Right, so you stand in front of the mirror and then just speak about your accomplishments, about whatever you're reflecting, say journaling on paper, you're just doing it loud with yourself in the mirror. Initially people laugh it off, and then the more they continuously do it, they say, hey, I didn't know this side of me existed. So sometimes what happens, it's such a silly exercise, most leaders, even most newbies, they hesitate. They're like, what kind of an activity is this? You see, sometimes we don't understand the intensity of an activity until you actually do it and experience it. So if somebody wants to start, they don't want to, probably invest in a coach or go to some, they don't have time. All that they have is like 2 minutes in a day for themselves. I think they should start with mirror exercise.
Fantastic. I think one aspect is not to look at anything as a silly exercise, and then start taking it up seriously and start doing consistently. Okay. So, the last part of the conversation with respect to moving from self doubt to self trust. Okay. What I wanted to ask you on this front is, let's say there is a person who has figured out they have a gap in confidence, and
Mhm.
they have had a journey wherein they have worked on in becoming better. Okay,
Mhm.
so what is a kind of a change in terms of their influence and energy that happens when they finally bridge this gap in confidence in themselves over a period of time?
Okay. I also wanted to add another thing to the previous question before I jump into this exercise. The very, very first basic ingredient of confidence to anybody, be it leader or no voice or a college student, is sticking to your words. I'll tell you what is the science behind it. Say if I tell you, Charan, you know what, I'll see you at 5 o'clock, and then I am late to the meeting, and it's already five. It's 5:01, and my mind is registering it because what is your mind? Mind is a machine which collects data and stores it in it for later reference. So I now have told myself, you know what, I committed to a person to come at 5, and then I didn't show up at 5. So internally, what meaning I'm giving to my mind is I'm not probably very responsible, right? So, and this might be a very small thing to start with, and then the more you say something, you will do it to yourself, to others, and then to self. When you don't stick to that, your mind is mocking you. Your mind is like, ha, so you to keep saying so many things, but then you don't really do it. I give this example, say, consider confidence like a mango. Okay, and you have this sharp knife, and you're just slicing it off like piece by piece, very, very thin slices. I'm not sure if I've given you this example before, but I would want to share it in this context because it adds a lot of meaning. Say that knife is very sharp, and I'm just slicing it off, slicing it off. That whole mango is your confidence. And every time you do not stick to whatever you're saying, your mind is noting it down. One layer of confidence is gone. One layer of confidence is gone. So when you start sticking to whatever you're saying, hey, I'll come at this time, go at that time. When you say, hey, this is what I'm going to do this weekend, do it. This is a very, very simple thing, but then knowing is and doing is different. If you start doing it, you will see that there's a renewed sense of energy, and then you will first start trusting yourself. When you see that change in you, people around you also start trusting you.
Now, coming back to my last question that I asked. So, uh, what happens when somebody who has discovered that they have had this lack of confidence and they've worked along and figured out and solved this, and then how much, from your experience, would it impact in their professional journeys?
Absolutely. People, when you enter the room, the presence is much more powerful. You can just feel that when a person who's super confident enters the room, you can just figure it out. Yeah, there are no metrics like how are you going to define it, how the person is dressed up, standing, talking, whatever. But then, the aura itself is very different. When the person owns what they're saying and then they just show up with that kind of a renewed sense of self trust, you can just figure it out. Very, very easy.
So the key giveaways for practical tips is look into the mirror and start working on yourself, and look at having the mango as whole and not slice and dice it off and just end up with having the seed alone.
The beauty of mango is it becomes whole again if you put in the effort. You have given enough logic and evidence that you do not stick to your words. If you start giving evidence that you now stick to the words, the mango starts becoming whole. So the focus on making the mango whole.
So there
Confidence.
are both sides. You slice the mango and you also regenerate the mango as well, is it? Wonderful. So that doesn't happen in real mango. So at least in
In
the
confidence mango, it does.
it does. So that takes us to the next important aspect of our conversation that we usually have towards the end of our podcast episodes. So what's next that we have on the Inside Out Conversations, Manju?
Last couple of sessions that I asked you a question as a host, we had a couple of interesting conversations. What are the red flags in personal branding, and branding, is it even really necessary? Now we are moving into another very important discussion, the next episode. Why is branding important? And it is going to be a broad conversation, but it is going to bring to light how can people start doing branding the right way. So that's what we're going to discuss in the next episode, and I'm very excited. And I hope you're also excited too.
I'm just trying to see how can I fit in a fruit into our conversation as well when we have.
I'm really excited to see what fruit are you going to choose.
I'm just going to get myself prepared for trying to bring a fruit analogy in our next conversation. So, on that note, I think I would need to let go of Manju. So, what we have explored today is something many leaders quietly carry, the confidence gap. And it's not about a lack of intelligence or skill or capability. It's about the subtle disconnect between what you can do and how you can show when it matters. As we have heard from Manju, confidence isn't about being the loudest in the room, it is about finding the right alignment between your inner self belief and your outward expression. And when you bridge that gap and you don't just grow as a leader, you also expand the impact that you have on everyone around you. So, if this is one thing that you can take away from this conversation, let it be this: your growth begins from inside, but it doesn't end there. How you bring that inner strength to the outside world, that's what defines your presence, your brand, and your influence as well. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Inside Out Conversations. If this resonated with you, please do share it with someone who might be holding themselves back. And join us next time as we continue to explore the spaces where personal growth meets public presence. And this is Charan, the co founder of UX Consulting Services, a personal branding expert, signing off from you. Bye bye.